The information contained in this video is strictly for informational purposes only and does not constitute financial, legal, or other professional advice and is not a substitute for consultation with a qualified professional. The opinions expressed in the show do not necessarily reflect the views of the Center for Continuing Education and Workforce Development, Borough of Manhattan Community College, and the City University of New York. State of Mind is a web-based discussion program that explores the relevant social, economic, and political issues that are prominent at the post-secondary level of education. State of Mind is sponsored by the Center for Continuing Education and Workforce Development at the Borough of Manhattan Community College. BMCC. Start here, go anywhere. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Krishna Nadella, and this is State of Mind. Wrapping up our Crisis on Campus series, today's topic is about student protection and student privacy. Back with us one more time to help us understand our topic and provide their very unique perspectives are the following guests. To my immediate left is Dr. Tina Walsh, who is currently the medical director at South Oaks Hospital, part of the North Shore Long Island Jewish Health System. She is also the director of perinatal psychiatry services at South Oaks Hospital and serves on the steering committee for Katz Women's Hospital at Long Island Jewish Medical Center. Dr. Walsh received her BA from Williams College, her MPH from Yale University, and her MD from Michigan State University. To Dr. Walsh's immediate left is Vice President Scott Anderson, who has served as BMCC's Vice President of Administration and Planning since 2000. He has more than 40 years of professional experience in higher education administration in CUNY at the campus and university levels. VP Anderson received his associate's degree from Queensborough Community College, Certificate of Study from Ruskin College, baccalaureate degree from Queens College, and master's degree from Baruch College. Next to VP Anderson is Deputy Commissioner Charles DeRienzo, who is the president of SecureCon LLC, a consulting firm that provides assistance in training, management, and security issues based on his extensive 42 years of experience in law enforcement. Prior to SecureCon, he began his law enforcement career with the NYPD in 1965 as a police officer and retired in 2008 as a deputy commissioner. Deputy Commissioner DeRienzo graduated from the New York Institute of Technology and attended the Columbia University Graduate School of Business and the NYC Police Management Institute. Dr. Walsh, VP Anderson, Commissioner DeRienzo, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Over the past several months, protecting student privacy and safeguarding student data have been hot topics in education policy. Student privacy has continued to garner attention from both Congress and the states. Starting with you, VP Anderson, with the increasing reliance on the use of technology within the academic community, how are colleges handling student information?
Well, because of the Buckley Amendment, which is a privacy act that was designed years ago to protect what's called the non-public information of our students, and that's social security numbers, date of birth, even private emails. The registrar's office, the financial aid office, and the admissions office really they've been the industry leaders in protecting privacy records. The problem is that sometimes, because of technology, people put personal information on thumb drives. Maybe they share passwords with administrative computers. Information does get out. What BMCC has done and CUNY is we've begun an ERP where our database now strips out the personal information from the person. We create an ample ID, a separate ID. And there's an algorithm so that you can match up the person with the database later, but we're using less and less private information on the web. Mm-hmm. That's absolutely key. You have to stop using, most agencies and private businesses. That's why you only see 4 digits right. On things, or you're missing 4 digits, one or the other. I think higher ed has to stop using private information, or non-public information it's called.
And Dr. Walsh, I'm sure there's a lot of parallels in the medical world as well.
We have electronic medical records, and that information is protected. There are audit trails to see who has accessed. It's just, it's the culture now that you only look at what you need to know, and because people can look at you looking at and can follow who has accessed a record. We don't send out Social Security numbers, any of that kind of private information, and we're protecting PHI as well, whether it be in email. There are encrypted emails internally or electronic medical records that are shared by the health system or multiple providers.
Commissioner DeRienzo, in the same vein, how does law enforcement look at the issue of personal information transferred through technology and even social media? Is that considered under the public domain, fair game?
Well, depending upon where it is and what it is. Recently, the Supreme Court has ruled that when police arrest someone, in order to look at the person's cell phone, which they used to look at, they need to get a search warrant for that cell phone now, because as the court ruled, there's so much information in that phone. It is your whole life in a computer in your phone. So they require now, for the first time, that if you arrest somebody, you want to look at their phone, that you have a justification for that, go to a judge and get a search warrant. On the other hand, things that are public on Twitter or Facebook are fair game, and it is a great resource for law enforcement or any other professional looking to delve into a person's, personality issues or maybe criminal thoughts. So that is wide open, and it is used readily. It's used to track gang members as well as other people that may commit crimes. You have someone who may be very questionable on campus. People are worried about that person. You look at their Twitter account, their Facebook account, which is open to everyone. You may find out some critical information that may prevent a tragedy coming along.
Now, just for everyone's edification, it should be noted that the United States does not have a Student Bill of Rights for students in institutions of higher education. While students technically are entitled to constitutional, civil, contract, and consumer rights, there is no document detailing how these rights apply in the educational setting or how and when students may exercise them. Additionally, there is no legal requirement that institutions create such a bill or what they must include in it. With that said, do law enforcement and academic institutions work together to maintain consistent standards as to how they approach student information and privacy? VP Anderson, Commissioner DeRienzo?
Well, let me just say that if there is a faux pas and private information or non-public information, we call it, personally identified information, Social Security numbers, et cetera, if it does get out, we actually have to report it to the university. It goes to the IG of New York State. It's a big deal. College campuses are responsible for protecting that personal information. And when a mistake, an error, or hacking is successful, we have to notify a whole string of people. But when it goes to the Inspector General, you've got a lot of questions to answer. We are also hidebound to contact the individuals named. You've got to let them know that you're taking financial responsibility for any fraudulent attempts to create identity fraud using their personal information, information you allow to be leaked. So this is a really big deal. It's treated very seriously by the campuses and I know by the hospitals.
Absolutely.
Dr. Walsh, are the parallels the same?
It is parallel. And for patient information, as far as their record, the patient has to give explicit permission for that record to be released. The only way someone else could access would be through a subpoena, a judge-signed court order in order to access the record. But PHI is protected, and there are actually fines if certain information, particularly the Social Security number, gets out. You do have obligations to report that, and there are fines that the institution faces should that occur.
Okay. What is the student's responsibility in regards to managing what they share? Where does social media fit into the existing technological problems?
I think that's an education, because kids, the technology has grown beyond our understanding of how best to contain it, and kids have put stupid things on their Facebook that they later regret when they go for a job interview down the road, because that stuff is still there. So as social media and Facebook and Twitter are out there and kids mature, they are learning what they should and shouldn't put on there. But law enforcement now can see anything that anybody does. And again, employers, never mind if you're ill or not, your employer can see your party pictures from when you were doing whatever you should or should not have been doing. College applications, too. They
college
can look at
application,
that
What we try to do during orientation is to let students know how they can hurt themselves.
Right.
And that this is now college, and so you have to put aside childish things, and handling your cyber etiquette is part of that. We do, and Dr. Walsh is absolutely right, we do let them know that they can put something up that will ruin their career irreparably. They can get a degree from Harvard, but if they had something really stupid up on the web, but you know, young people don't see this, but I think it's a constant educational process. So
it almost lends itself to a mandated course of cyber, security
Etiquette.
101 when you
Right.
come into the college, if not in high school.
Well, we're sort of laughing about it, but is
No,
that where
it's-
we're heading towards? You know?
Well, it should be mandated, maybe even in high schools, because it's a tool that we never realized has all this potential. And it's sometimes too late when you get to college. So maybe even in high schools they should be giving a class in this.
Well, the problem is it happened after we were,
Yes.
playing with this, would be playing with this kind of stuff.
Right.
So our kids are the ones that are exploring and learning about these things, and they're making mistakes as they do so. So as it matures, as the technology matures, as our understanding of it matures, we will likely have etiquette 101. We do that for orientees to the hospital employees about etiquette for emails. What if you're going to do something, pick up the phone and call
Right.
someone rather than put it in email.
Right.
Particularly if it's something concerning that you want to have guaranteed private information, and not to forward emails. You see strings of emails
Please don't
that
hit
someone
reply
wrote.
all.
Someone wrote something about a person at the bottom, and that
Yes.
person receives it about
Right.
4 strings later, and it's not so nice down there,
Right.
or not complimentary. So we're just getting our hands around that, and employers too are just getting their hands around what to do about emails and what to put in and what not to put in, and don't put all caps because you look like you're yelling at people.
Right.
There's just basic etiquette.
Right. It seems that in the race to be technologically advanced, we forgot to think about how quickly it is that we gave up our privacy and how hard it is to get it back. You had mentioned, forget college, high school. 4 years of high school, 4 years of college, maybe 2 years of graduate school. You got enough party pictures from Cabo and Fort Lauderdale and
There you go.
God knows where else.
Sure.
You got about a decade's worth of pictures that you may never be able to take back. And maybe the real answer is not even high school, but really educating them
Before
as
you
they
get your account.
Yeah.
Yes, probably the first time you get a smartphone and an account, you probably should have to take a class
Right.
in how to deal with the
Don't
privacy.
ruin your life.
Right.
The problem is that technology has changed so much that, I mean, even if you're a do-gooder and you're not on social media, just using your cell phone, you have already made purchases that's being tracked. By using your credit card to go to a beauty parlor or a movie, you've already told someone what your preferences are. So even when you're not posting terrible pictures or anything up on the web, people are being tracked, and I think that we're only learning how much so that these etiquette classes, I think you're right, Dr. Walsh, these etiquette classes I think are always going to be behind the actual event themselves. So,
Simple little thing like going to a drugstore and getting a discount card. They're tracking everything you do every time you use that card. And they're getting a history of your likes and dislikes and what products you're using and not using. And you're giving that privacy up for a discount. You may not understand that, but you are.
So in previous Crisis on Campus episodes, we discussed the topics of bullying and depression and mental health in school shootings. When individual students are suspected of potentially disrupting an academic institution, what rights does said institution have to protect itself and its students?
for instance, using the network at BMCC, you have to agree to abide by the City University's computer use policy. So if there is some egregious behavior on the internet using the network, you can be shut down immediately, but there may be civil and criminal charges that could be preferred, or student disciplinary charges that the college could prefer locally. Depends on what it is, you know, but certainly bullying, cyber stalking, those are very serious grounds.
And from a law enforcement standpoint, Commissioner DeRienzo, if an individual were deemed a threat to others, can law enforcement utilize that individual's personal data to prevent them from inflicting harm? Or again, is it, as we kind of alluded to, they have rights themselves that we can't violate?
Law enforcement usually is not able to take action until something has been committed. The thought of committing something is not enough. But in building up an alert system, you can look at these social media sites to try and identify and maybe try to get people to intercede, whether it be the family or mental health professionals, you know, together with the school, doing something. But no, just mere thought is not enough for the commission of a crime, and the police act on the commissions of crime. Even like in our proactive modes today, we still have to rely on the act of the commission of the crime.
We can, though, as a physician,
Please.
a psychiatrist, if there is an imminent threat, we can bring that to law enforcement's attention or get the patient involuntarily committed to a psychiatric facility if we have that risk of imminent harm to self or others.
And this is where the interplay between law enforcement, medical health, and academic.
Mobile crisis, there are various things throughout the city and state that can be activated, but it has to be imminent.
And New York City Police Department has a working relationship with the New York State, New York City Department of Mental Health, and constantly meeting and discussing these issues and working together. In fact, our emotionally disturbed workshop that takes place in John Jay College, where every police officer is trained in identifying and dealing with emotionally disturbed people, something that Dr. Anderson had done here for his security people, alerting them to the issues and how to deal with it and identify. Very important piece of training that goes into every police officer in New York City.
So is the task of policing become much more of a mental game in the last several years than it's been more of a physical one?
It is quite, yes, it's always going to be physical, but yes, there's a lot of mental portions to it, yes.
Well, let me just add, though, it's also required on a college campus that the faculty and the staff be trained to identify what's, you know, behavior that might be a little aberrant or a little irregular that would warrant, some action, whether that is going to a counselor or something a little more aggressive, a little more serious. I think that you cannot put this kind of thing on the shoulders of your public safety staff on campus or on PD, because there are too many people who get underneath the radar.
Right.
So you have to, I think you really have to educate. I think it's what Dr. Walsh was saying before. You really do have to educate a broader community of people to be sensitive to this and to also feel comfortable about reporting it.
So this kind of plays up well because you and I had spoken prior to the show that September is National Awareness Month and National Preparedness Month. My apologies. Aside from the most overt aspects of preparing and educating a college campus, with the new school year coming around the corner, how do new students arrive and how do schools prepare for the onset of new students with no background history whatsoever to really take note of, to prepare for what is really the invariable aspect of the unknown?
Well, okay, again, it's not an accident that September is National Preparedness Month, considering what happened on 9/11. But I think it's very difficult to overwhelm a student who's new to a college campus. They're new to college life, period, with too much information. Too much information just overloads. But I think that most handbooks that are given out for freshmen contain where you go for information, where you go for support, for reporting different kinds of things that happen. But after the semester starts, we begin with the public safety months, which Charlie has been very helpful with us, arranging with the NYPD. I think that every college needs to cycle in. We do things like if we see a book bag or a rucksack that's unattended, or a student's fallen asleep and they didn't use it as a pillow, but it's next to them, our public safety staff will either take the bag if it's unattended, or they'll attach a sticky that's a security summons warning them that this is not a very smart thing to do. You try to create a very informative but a safe educational process to let people know they have a responsibility for their own safety. What we do at BMCC is we honor all of our fire wardens and all the people that have volunteered to take CPR courses, first aid courses, all of that. We offer that on the web for students for free. Why? Because it's important to build this consciousness of safety. I think that's the kind of thing most colleges try to do. Residential schools do it all the time. But as a commuter institution, we feel it's important.
So in the analogy of we see in the professional world, background checks are very commonplace. Before someone's hired, they can go through the entire interview process. They can ace it with all the people that they see across the table. But then we still do the background check because we want to make sure we know everything about this individual before they come on work for our organization.
Yes.
From an academic standpoint, is that in place? And if not, is there thoughts towards that?
Well, I'm going to answer this as diplomatically as I can. It's done for one category of employee. It's not done for faculty. That's the way it is.
Sure.
And the category of employee that it's done for, where there are background checks and fingerprints, by the way, is our civil service titles. But we're in a collective bargaining environment, and so that was what was agreed upon by the unions with the university.
Right.
Right now, it's just civil service staff.
Sure.
But it's a very costly process.
Oh, yeah.
And as you know, in the business world, that's part of doing business. But in the academic world, to do a background check on every student would, put a tremendous financial burden on the schools. Students themselves are paying so much money as it is to get an education, to pay for the books and everything else. To add that cost on would, you'd need a really tremendous reason to put them through that, I think.
And the yield might be modest. You're fishing in a big sea for a couple of fish, and that the yield might be. And
you're going to get people that come to Berman and CUNY College who may have committed crimes, who may have a record, who are trying to redeem themselves and move forward with their lives. Come here and you can go anywhere, and and so
who are not dangerous, who are rehabilitated.
Yes,
and are not dangerous.
So I mean, it's a real major issue, that you have to deal with.
Well, I think that's a really good point, Dr. Walsh. I'd like to get your thoughts on that one. Let's talk about rehabilitation. Let's talk about individuals who are trying to get their lives back on track. How do we make sure that they're protected? How do we make sure that they can move forward? And to the extent that you've spoken on a few of the episodes now about privacy and not having that disclosed, but for stuff that's in the public domain, not through social media, not through their own accord, but because they had no control, but it is out there. What is the place, and if it is mentally related, that they can find some sort of safe haven to be able to at least have a chance to move forward with their life?
I think, again, that's education and the understanding that not every mental disorder is the same thing. There are more and less serious illnesses for which people have been hospitalized. I treat at times pregnant and postpartum women who have been hospitalized because of a short-term depression after giving birth to a baby, that they were dangerous at that moment or potentially dangerous.
Sure.
But that was then treated and resolved. That person should not be branded as having an ongoing issue. Just like other health issues, some are acute and some are chronic, some are higher risk, some may be fatal, just like other health-related conditions. So we have to stop brandishing the big swath of mental illness and focus perhaps more on some of the disorders and the time periods in those disorders where there's more of an acute situation and more risk to public safety.
And VP Anderson, from that standpoint, from the rehabilitation perspective, the university, at least the BMCC, also provides, in the same vein as we provide for mental health services, areas for individuals who are trying to get their lives back on track to have a support circle? We
do. We have a very good support system. I do have to say that New York City and New York State law does not allow us to discriminate against someone who has had a criminal record. If they have paid their dues to society and if they don't lie on an application,
of course,
that's what gets you into trouble. If you really don't tell the truth, but we're legally not able to discriminate against anyone. And people, I think you said this yourself, people are trying to get their lives together.
Right.
Whether they're indigent because of financial reasons or they've made poor choices in the past and they paid the price for that. We're a port of entry, if you will.
Right.
College campus, and particularly BMCC and CUNY, is a port of entry for a new life for many people. And we're not here really to bar folks from trying to take advantage of those opportunities to improve their lives, but we really do have a very serious responsibility to protect them and their health and safety when they arrive here.
Right.
So.
And Commissioner DeRienzo, from the standpoint of someone who's a juvenile or a minor, and they do have something that's holding them back, but wanting to move forward. What is the statute of limitations in terms of that record being expunged from their
Yes, those records oftentimes, as a juvenile, are very difficult to get. Those are kept quite confidential, so that it doesn't affect you as you move along unless it's a serious crime, an adult crime.
And to the point of the academic world, the mental health world, and the law enforcement world working together, what steps can we take to move forward to make sure that privacy, protection of the student body, of the student individual is, continuing to be monitored? My biggest, sentiment, I think, coming out of today's episode is the internet, because it's not controllable. It's not something that we can necessarily educate soon enough. But when individuals have access to the World Wide Web, when they have access to be able to communicate their world, their brand, what's necessary to make sure that it's not done irresponsibly?
This is a real tricky one, because the use of the internet now has become so commonplace. And matter of fact, it's like turning on a spigot on a faucet. How do you educate a person how to turn the water on or off? I think that the only thing that we can do is to create educational environments at the home level and in the primary, secondary schools and colleges to let people know if you do X, you might get Y. It's an educational process built on if-then statements, if you will. But the technologies make it very difficult for us to even stay ahead of identifying the potential dangers of certain behavior. But inherently people know what's right and wrong, they just don't know the consequences.
So just in the same vein as some of our previous episodes where we talked about the parents, what is the parents' role now in educating their children on the internet?
They have to become educated first, because the kids are teaching us at the
Exactly.
And that's where the dichotomy is different.
This is way beyond us. My little grandchildren are way ahead of me on these things. It's they'll be teaching us. But
that's the use of the technology. The issue really is how does Grandpa get across to the child what it's going to cost if the wrong photograph or the wrong statement is made.
Because the lesson's still the same.
The lesson's
even
the same.
though the medium's different.
And there are parents that have been educated or a little savvy to these things, but many parents aren't. And so it almost lends itself to the education process to be teaching these things in grammar school, because that's where the computers are now. They're learning all of these things. They're bringing those smartphones into schools, and so maybe the educational system has to catch up to the technology.
It's just a harder lesson to learn, as we talked about in an earlier episode, how the lack of the human response and being able to turn off what might have been a harassing statement because you have I see it hurts you. On the web and the information, you don't see where it all goes, and so again, there's an obliviousness and a anonymity to that information going out. That we have to that concept has to be taught. That it's not nothing to do that. This is potentially doing something big. Stranger danger is fine when you see the creepy guy driving up in the car, but stranger danger to the World Wide Web is a little more difficult. But they have to have the same gut feeling that stranger danger is the same stranger danger, even if you can't see them.
If that's starting at the the preschool level, if that's starting at the very early stages, the grassroots level of education, VP Anderson, when we look at how we're educating people today, regardless of the degree, regardless of the background, is that something we just need to be more cognizant of incorporating into education in general?
We must do. We have to. You can't assume that everyone comes to the table with the same level of understanding, appreciation, or knowledge of what technology can do, or bad behavior will happen. So we have a dire responsibility. And
Commissioner DeRienzo, from the standpoint of law enforcement, how have you guys utilized technology to use as a safe haven versus an exploitative tool?
Well, the systems within law enforcement are strictly administered, and it is a crime to abuse those systems, whether you be an employee or not. So it's strictly held, the information. But again, the public information is just like things you might do out on the street, with all of the cameras watching you or people seeing what you're doing. the things you put in the public domain, you know, are fair game for everyone. So you as an individual have to take responsibility, understand what you're doing when you do it.
I think we can all agree that responsibility starts with the individual. Dr. Walsh, VP Anderson, Commissioner DeRienzo, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank our guests for joining us today and providing their very unique perspectives. If you like what you saw in today's episode, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you have any thoughts for me, you can reach out by email or by Twitter. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today. And remember, every life is a book. Make yours a bestseller. Have a good night.